In 1941, Nazi Germany launched an invasion of the Soviet Union. Operation Barbarossa became the largest military invasion in human history. Millions of German troops crossed the border, bringing with them a vehicle the Soviets had never encountered before. It was small, fast, and agile, called the SDKFZ-2222. This German armored car was groundbreaking for its era. Light and quick, it could scout enemy positions and vanish before the opposition could respond. Soviet commanders observed these machines moving across the battlefield and realized they lacked anything comparable. The Red Army's armored cars, the BA-10 and BA-20, were serviceable, but they rode on truck frames. They were slow, bulky, and easily spotted. German forces could see them from miles away. Soviet High Command decided they needed a new light armored car, and they needed it urgently. The German advance was pushing toward Moscow. Time for extended development and testing did not exist. In October 1941, engineers at the Gau factory received an urgent directive. They were to design a new armored car using the Gau 64 Jeep chassis, ensuring it was light, fast, and inexpensive, all within weeks rather than years. The lead designer, Vitaly Grachev, was skilled, but the circumstances were extreme. German forces were nearing Moscow daily, and the factory might have to evacuate at any moment. There was no opportunity for thorough testing, prototypes, or correcting flaws. Grachev and his team worked tirelessly, studying captured German vehicles, including the SDKFZ-222. They borrowed concepts and improvised solutions. Within a few months, they produced a functional prototype. The BA-64 came into existence. On paper, it appeared impressive. The vehicle weighed only 2.4 tons and could reach a top speed of 80 kilometers per hour on roads. Its armor was angled, a forward-thinking design for 1941. Angled armor helped deflect bullets and shell fragments more effectively than flat plates. The BA-64 held a crew of two, a driver and a commander, who also operated the machine gun. Its turret carried a DT machine gun with sufficient ammunition for prolonged combat. Soviet leadership approved the design immediately, and mass production began in 1942. Factories produced these compact armored cars in massive numbers. By the end of the war, more than 9,000 BA-64 vehicles had been completed. Yet a major issue existed from the beginning. The engineers understood it clearly, but there was no time to solve it. The BA-64 carried a deadly weakness in its design. The vehicle stood too high. Its proportions revealed the problem immediately. The chassis sat far above the ground while the body remained narrow. That created a dangerously elevated center of gravity. This was not an accident in engineering. It was a compromise forced by necessity. The designers required enough clearance for rough terrain, along with room for the drivetrain and crew compartment. The final result was a machine that lacked stability. Soviet troops learned this reality through experience. The BA-64 overturned often. A sudden turn at high speed could send it rolling. Crossing an angled slope could do the same. Even uneven terrain at moderate speed sometimes flipped the vehicle onto its side or roof. The danger became even worse because of the turret. Early models used an open-top turret mounted above the hull. When the armored car rolled over, the commander positioned there could be crushed instantly. Escape was difficult. The hatches were small and hard to open under pressure. Some crews became trapped inside burning vehicles. Others drowned after their BA-64 plunged into rivers or streams and overturned. Frontline reports repeated the same pattern again and again. Crews traveled down roads, swerved around obstacles, or entered turns too quickly. The BA-64 tipped over, and soldiers lost their lives. The Red Army understood the seriousness of the issue. Engineers attempted corrections. Later versions received a wider track. The BA-64B model, introduced in 1943, improved stability compared to the original design. Even so, the core issue never disappeared. The armored car remained too tall and too narrow. Soviet commanders adjusted battlefield procedures. Orders limited turning speeds. Crews received warnings about slopes and uneven ground. Soldiers were instructed to drive cautiously. But combat conditions rarely allowed perfect caution. The BA-64 continued serving throughout the war. It performed reconnaissance missions, handled communication duties, and escorted convoys. The vehicle fought during the Battle of Stalingrad. In 1945, it entered Berlin alongside advancing Soviet forces. In spite of its weaknesses, the BA-64 filled an urgent need inside the Red Army. The cost in human lives, however, was heavy. Precise figures remained difficult to determine because Soviet military records from World War II were incomplete. Numerous accidents were never fully recorded. Still, surviving veterans shared their memories. They spoke about comrades who were killed not by German fire, but by their own armored car turning over. Some historians estimate that hundreds of BA-64 crews were killed or injured in rollover incidents. This remains a rough figure. The actual number could be higher or lower, but it was certainly not zero. The tragedy lies in the fact that the flaw was known from the start. Grachev and his team understood the stability issue. They informed military officials, yet the war would not wait. The Red Army required vehicles immediately. A flawed machine was preferable to none at all. This approach reflected a common theme in Soviet wartime production. Speed outweighed perfection. Quantity outweighed quality. Early T-34 tanks had significant issues. Soviet aircraft faced problems. Weapons were imperfect, yet they were manufactured in large numbers and contributed to victory. The BA-64 followed the same principle. It was inexpensive and straightforward. Factories could assemble them rapidly with materials on hand. Despite its instability, it remained functional. It could transport soldiers into combat, engage the enemy, and perform its role most of the time. After the war, the BA-64 was quickly retired. The Soviet Union developed more advanced armored cars. Lessons from the BA-64 influenced future designs. Engineers focused more on stability, widened vehicles relative to height, and improved escape hatches and crew safety. Today, the BA-64 is mostly forgotten. It lacks the fame of the T-34 or the Katyusha rocket launcher. Western audiences know little about it. Even in Russia, it is overshadowed by more renowned weapons. Yet for the soldiers who operated them, the BA-64 was reality. It carried them into battle. For some, it became the instrument of their deaths, not from enemy fire, but from a known flaw that could not be fixed in time. War forces, harsh choices. The BA-64 exemplified one of them. A flawed vehicle produced under impossible conditions to meet an impossible deadline. It aided in winning the war, but claimed lives in ways never fully recorded. A few BA-64s survive in museums today. They sit quietly behind barriers, appearing small and harmless. Visitors pass without knowing the full story about crews who overturned and could not escape, and about engineers who recognized the danger but could not correct it. This is their story. Please leave your thoughts about this content in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.